It's fine.
All right. Welcome to F1 F Off, your audio pit stop for F1 news, interviews, and race reviews. I'm your host, Iddris.
And I'm Gabe.
And here we are, folks. Here we are. It is the final race of the season here in Abu Dhabi. Yes.
The Yas.
I mean, can you believe it?
Island.
Can you believe it that we're here? Like,
I know. I was thinking about that. It's just, this is, you know, it kind of feels like we've been doing this for so long now.
yeah.
Like, I just thinking back to like the stuff that we were doing in the first episode. Like, I stopped doing my old-timey race reviews because I don't think anybody cared. Like,
Well, you know, actually, that's a good question. Fans, here's a question for you. If you can give us the nicknames that Gabe has assigned in the first, like, old-timey race recap that Gabe did, you get a free shirt. Because we're doing some merch here soon.
Oh.
So,
oh,
yeah.
oh God.
Yeah.
Well, let's say they need to give me at least 5. Let's just say that because I didn't do everybody.
Yeah,
but I did quite a few.
Give a handful of names, and then you get added to
the nicknames. Yeah, send us a DM.
Yeah,
show us that you're a true fan of Fufo. You're a true Fufo elite,
and you are the Fufo fam. You're the patriarch or matriarch of or non-genderless. What would the non-genderless version of matriarch or patriarch be? Just like family head. I guess that works. Something like that, right?
Royalty,
the noble,
Yes, yeah. I guess so. You know, well, that's the thing. I think if we end up having something like a Patreon and we need to make tiers, we need to do like the tiers of the Fufo fam, which honestly we already have because we have the nerds, the dweebs, and the casuals.
Yeah,
I don't know if I feel bad if the basic membership is called casuals. But maybe that would incentivize them to get to the next tier because they don't want to be called casuals. So
yeah, or maybe just the basic tier could be Fufo fam, right? Like you're already in the fam, you know. But then like, if you know what level of family are you? Are you a nerd? Are you a casual? Are you a filthy casual?
Well, we could do Fufo fam, and then the next tier is the Fufo casuals, and then the Fufo nerds, and then the Fufo dweebs, and then the Fufo nerds.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I dig it.
We'll talk about. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's not a bad idea to have eventually. You know?
Yeah. You guys are just getting into the inner workings and the machinations of our minds as we think about these kinds of things.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't believe it. We are here at the end of season 2023, and today's race there was nothing different at all from previous races. So you know how this episode's going to go. You already know who won. You already know who fumbled the bag. You know who was slow as hell on the straights, and you know who was mouthing off on the radio. I'll let you fill in who those drivers are as we go.
Timeless classics from the F1 23 season, including ones as Max winning, Ferrari fumbling the strategy, McLaren finishing a 2-3. Yeah, no, it was definitely more of the same. In some ways, which I was not. I mean, I wasn't expecting some big shakeup at the Yas Marina. Although, I was a little confused because usually when I look at the when I pull up the F1 app, I don't watch it live most of the time. You know, unless it's like within a reasonable time.
You don't wake up at 3:30 in the morning to watch a race in Suzuka?
Ain't nobody got time for that. Well, they'll do it, but they don't have time for it. But no, I usually when I pull that up, if it says like that this is like a 2.5 hour event or more, I'm thinking, what does that mean? Like, is there a safety car? But that didn't happen. So maybe just the final whatever. I didn't watch past them, you know, going through the weighbridge or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if they just like extended something after. But usually, if it's like more than 2 hours, that means something else happened in the race. So.
Oh, I'll tell you, you missed a huge bumping party after the fact. So yeah,
I'm sure
that was cool.
That's fine.
Yeah,
that's fine. That's fine.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, real talk, I guess let's just talk about Abu Dhabi because this is honestly a racetrack that does not get a lot of love. And I think it's because of the lack of, how do I say, je ne sais quoi, how you Americans say, like no character, right? It has like there's no like defining feature to it, right? That makes you go, oh man, I'm so excited for Abu Dhabi, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that people mistake like surrounding environment for features. But like when we say
Yeah,
like a feature on a track, we're not talking the Vegas lights.
yeah,
We're
right,
not
right.
talking the giant iron bull in Austria. Like we're talking like elevation change,
Mm-hmm.
like the huge hill that runs up to the first corner at Austria and at the USGP. That's a
Mm-hmm.
feature.
Yeah,
The hairpin at Monaco, the corkscrew at Spa.
mm-hmm.
The
The bridges in Suzuka.
yeah, the crossover in
Mm-hmm.
Suzuka, like that's a feature on the track. Even Monza has like this. It has like the long swooping corner. There's all these straightaways. Like it's like there's like two straightaways connected
Yep.
by like a long swooping turn. Like that's like a feature of a track that's not at every track. Um, so Yas Marina has like it has that like kind of like weird sort of elephant shape like hotel that crosses the track, and it's got the giant Ferrari
Yeah, Ferrari
playground
World.
like
Yeah, some
amusement park
amusement
in the
park thing. Yeah.
background. But like for the most part the track just has it's relative, it's pretty much pretty flat. There's a little bit of an elevation change going down to the first sort of set of corners after the start finish straight. But yeah, for the most part, it's just like a straight. It's got two long straights. It's got like a couple of swooping turns. It has that thing where it's like a box turn where it's like they turn right and then they turn left and then it's like a left and right. It's like a very sort of symmetrical sort of thing, which is definitely a Tilka
Mm-hmm.
move I've noticed.
You know,
Um,
yeah, 100%. Go ahead. I have a thought
well,
about the track
I
layout.
yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I think that it's a track that unfortunately creates DRS trains
Mm,
because there's just not enough variation in what's happening that you can play to different drivers' strengths.
yeah.
Some are better at positioning and than others. Some are better than at handling straightaways and defending.
Mm-hmm.
Some have different braking zone points. Like there's nothing to really shake up the field in that way. It's really all just like who has the fastest car
Yeah.
throughout the circuit on average, and it.
Yeah, the reason I bring it up is the track layout is just because I'm looking at the track layout because what popped into my mind was Abu Dhabi feels like the budget version of the Canadian Grand Prix of the Gilles Villeneuve track, right? If you look at the layout of the Canadian GP, it's similar to what you see with Abu Dhabi, but it's just that Abu Dhabi, like instead of like the Canadian GP is kind of more of an oval, honestly. I mean,
Mhm.
it's elongated, right? It's not an oval track. So if you hear me saying that and you're thinking like IndyCar,
Mhm.
that's not what I'm talking about.
Right.
It's more of an oval in terms of its like approach, right? Its
Mhm.
thesis. Whereas you
Mhm.
look at the Abu Dhabi track, it's the same thing, and then halfway through the oval, it just goes, and then just like kind of like cracks its cracks its head to the
Yeah.
left.
Right.
And what's funny is that the two are kind of similar, but the Canadian GP is always so much better, right? Because it's a power
Mhm.
track and there's a lot going on, right?
Yeah.
I guess the Canadian track is interesting because what you're doing there is you are telling all the teams, hey man, come in with tons of power and let's just go to town, right? Whereas Abu Dhabi doesn't necessarily commit. So I wonder if there's like another big change that they can make to Abu Dhabi to make it a better track. Um, so yeah, I don't know. That's just my take on it.
I think another thing with that, another feature that Abu Dhabi has that I'm not a huge fan of is the fact that the track in certain places is really, really, really wide, and the
Mm,
runoff areas are road.
yeah,
That's the
yeah,
thing
yeah.
is I think that with what makes them some really exciting tracks generally is that like okay, think of it this way, like, and we see this with track limits. Like I think
Hmm.
Martin was talking about track limits during the race too, because there were a couple of moments where Charles was getting close to needing to get penalized.
Hmm.
I think that when you have a track that has consequences for your mistakes,
Yeah,
psychologically, I think that puts drivers a little bit more on edge,
Absolutely.
and will kind of thins out the herd between like who can take risks and who can't. Canada has a lot of grass, and you run off on grass. That's not, you can't just like turn and then keep going. Like there's consequences to that.
Yeah.
There's closer walls. Now I'm not saying this in like, oh, it's more dangerous and therefore it's more exciting. It's like, no, it's just that like part of the reason why track limits is such an issue is because drivers know that they can push their boundaries far enough and then they won't have to worry about hitting a wall.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So they're able to sort of test out those waters, and then it makes it more difficult for I think it just makes for less exciting racing because it's just a variable that's now missing.
Sure.
That some drivers are better at overcoming than others. So,
yeah. So what you're telling me is that you didn't like the over 9,000 track limit violations that were had at at Austria.
Oh my God. Well, see, that it was so frustrating. I mean, because it's just like, honestly, like there has to be a line in the sand, if you will.
Sure.
For going off
just like
track.
egregious.
Like there has to be a line drawn somewhere. Yeah. And it's and the thing is like, yeah, like I said, like drivers are, some of these people, like they're willing to feel like, okay, we're only going to get X amount of penalty. Like Max usually builds up way more than a 5-second gap. So like to him to like get that extra position, to make sure that he secures the race win, he'll go a little bit off track because it doesn't matter to him. Mm-hmm. I think that they should really look into fixing the consequences for certain things like going off track. You know what I mean? Like there needs to be more than just a penalty on track, or it needs to scale up as it continues to move forward. So, but yeah,
I feel that.
I don't know, but anyway, I mean, we didn't see a lot of that at Yas Marina. It was just mostly there was a few decent battles in there, but it was mostly just like all down to who was going to pit first and who was on what strategy for tires, which like it can be exciting, but if if these things are not paired with good on track action, it doesn't feel like much has happened.
Yeah, yeah. It can feel like it feels very processional, right? Like, like at least with Monaco, people accuse it of being processional, and I'm one of those people. I'll say that. But at least the qualifying is really fun and exciting, right? There's a history and lore to the place that, when you look at the technical developments that have happened within F1, within the sports, with how large the cars have gotten, right? If you were to go back in time and see how small the cars were and like all the action that was happening on track, right? You think and counter that with Yas Marina. I don't know if smaller cars would make it better at Abu Dhabi. I mean, 2016, the floor plan of the F1 cars were just much smaller, and this racing was still mid. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's definitely a thing of just like the character of the track and like the track limits, just effectively all the reasons you mentioned.
Similar problem that like the what is it? The track at the Paul Ricard circuit in France.
Yeah, in France.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's the same sort of thing. It's just really big and really wide, and there's just lots of open runoff areas that like are there. So it's just kind of like
bumper cars.
Yeah, it just it's just not like it's so weird because it's like you look at a track like Silverstone. Silverstone is very flat because there's literally just airfield, but just the way that it's laid out and the way that it's positioned, like it feels it is an exciting race to watch.
Yeah.
And I think just because, like you said, because it's a power circuit, like it sort of has that. It's like if you're going to have a power circuit, have a power circuit.
Yeah.
Like don't have like power circuit and then like no. It just feels like it throws the balance off, and I would say from strategy wise and car setup wise, it probably makes it an interesting challenge, but
yeah.
I don't know. It's just something. It just doesn't translate onto track. It doesn't translate onto screen very well. So,
no. All right, dope. So we've been doing a lot of talking about Yas Marina. So here to give you some track facts.
Track facts.
I think Gabe, you want to walk us through some fun tidbits about the Yas Marina circuit?
Yes. So The name of the event. So we have the Formula One. Oh God, I don't know how to pronounce
I would
this.
assume Etihad.
It's Etihad Airways. The Abu Dhabi Grand Prix 2023. This is the second track that we have sponsored by an air flight, right? It's Qatar and
So
then
I think
this,
Qatar
right?
Airways is the other one. I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Fascinating. The track is called the Yas Marina Circuit, and it's on Yas Island. So it's the marina, kind of on this. I'm pretty sure it's a man-made island, right? I think that was like
Everything
yeah.
out there is man-made islands. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's located in the United Arab Emirates, right outside of Abu Dhabi, which, fun fact, is the world's richest city.
That's insane.
Which means that the average net worth of the 200 or 420,000 people that live in there is 17 million US dollars. That's an average.
Wait.
Like-
What?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. This is
Whoa. Whoa.
Yeah, sit down, Vegas.
Whoa.
Um, think about that for a second. 420,000 people, so it's like just under the population of Wyoming. Okay.
Jeez.
And the average
Net worth of a citizen.
of all of those people, 17 million.
Jeez.
I mean, that's insane, right?
Wow.
I don't know
Wow.
it makes me wonder what's the average net worth of, I don't know, Los Angeles, like.
Oh, it's gonna be super low. I would wager.
Yeah. Anyway, but so
It's not 117 million Abu Dhabi money. I'll tell you that.
yeah, right. Yeah. So very, very rich city, very rich track. And yeah, I mean,
On the broadcast, they mentioned it was $1 billion to build that.
oh yeah, big time. And it was conceived in 2006 and then finished in 2009.
Man.
Yeah, pretty wild. And I remember like when the track was like announced and brought out, like it seemed really interesting. And there's been a lot of really interesting things that have happened there, like the whole leave me alone, I know what I'm doing thing from Kimi Räikkönen. That was when he was in Lotus. That was at the Yas Marina Circuit. Obviously, the huge controversy after the 2021 title deciding race between Lewis and Max was the Yas Marina with Latifi hitting the wall and bringing out a safety car, which I'm honestly going to say in hindsight, poor Latifi, he did not deserve to get the kind of hate mail that he got after,
Insane.
getting into an accident. People are nuts.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I can say too, after driving on this track in a couple of racing video games now, I will say that I'm not a huge fan of driving around this track. Mostly because it's hard to memorize. Like it's hard to remember however the track layout it goes, because it feels
just meanders.
It just feels like it doesn't have enough sort of things to sort of kind of make it distinguished feeling. It's weird. I feel like that's a be interesting thing that you and I could almost do. It's just like because each of us should be able to have access to a racing game that's got this track, like some of these tracks on it. Part of the reason I need to get like the Formula One 2023 video game so that I can drive through these tracks and be like, yeah, there's like this elevation here. Like I'll pull a Rosberg.
Do you ever watch his track analysis?
Every once in a while.
YouTube videos. Yeah, they're pretty good. He plays on Assetto Corsa. We were actually just talking about that before. So for anyone like give us like some recommendations on some good driving games we should play, y'all. I'm thinking about picking up Assetto Corsa on Steam. Looks pretty nice. I think that is the game of choice that all the drivers do their sim racing in. And there's also iRacing.
There's iRacing, yeah. Assetto Corsa has some cool stuff. My dream thing that I saw that they do, I really want is obviously I want to have like a steering wheel set up.
Sure.
But they also have
full out.
like VR capability.
Ooh, yes.
And I saw somebody had a VR headset with a steering wheel, and they were in it was like the Japanese highway like system.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were just on an online lobby with just like a bunch of dudes and like tuners, and they're just driving or like speeding up around the highway and just like driving around like a big car meet. And I'm like, I want to be part of that. Like, that's all I've ever wanted as a kid.
That's excellent.
Yeah, it'd be amazing.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's talk a little bit about the pre-race drama, pre-race things, stuff that kind of happened, kind of the build up.
Yeah, things leading into the race.
Yeah, I would say really the main thing that was the talking point was the fact that this race was sort of the decider for a lot of the final places for the constructors and drivers championships. Mercedes and Ferrari were kind of coming into this in their final battle. Aston Martin and McLaren were gonna kind of sort out who was gonna finish where. So that was really the big sort of talking point, and it's always good to have that. I like when it comes down to the final race to have things decided.
Yeah, it's fun.
Which is why it's always a little bit disappointing when like the driver and constructors championship doesn't boil down to a single race. But we have to count those events when we can. Like we have to embrace that when the rarity of it showing up. The big one obviously was Mercedes and Ferrari, thing that was also really exciting that I was super happy to see is that the free practice 1 session had a huge amount of like reserve drivers, test drivers, who were taking place or taking part of the practice session, including our pal from IndyCar, Pato O'Ward was driving for McLaren. And let's see who else was in there. There we had Felipe Drugovich, who was the person who was supposed to step in for Lance Stroll at the beginning of the year, but Lance made his miraculous recovery. Let's see, we had Robert Schwartzman for Ferrari. We had Frederick Vesti driving Mercedes, Jack Doohan driving Alpine, Theo Porchari, who was, as you remember, a good friend of Shinali and Tiernan, and who has actually just won the Formula 2 World Championship.
Let's go.
So, congratulations to him. Shout out to Theo. Patrick Award, Jake Dennis, who was the Formula E champion. He was driving for I think he was driving for Andretti. Isaac Hajar, Zach O'Sullivan, and is it Oliver or Olivier? No, it's Oliver Behrman. So quite a few alternates driving in that session. Felipe Drugovich was number 2, just behind Mercedes, driven by George Russell. So, and that was only 0.2 seconds behind.
0.2.
So
nice.
Honestly, really, really good. Performance considering. But yeah, Ricardo, Bottas, and Lance all had within top 5 times in FP1. Which, I mean, you could say, oh, it's FP1, it's what it is, but honestly, I don't, I'm trying not to think too down about just a practice session, because it's, they're out there, they're showing some example of what is going to be coming around. So,
sure.
So yeah, that was a really cool thing to see. We had a few accidents in free practice, but for the most part, it went through pretty smoothly. Except for Carlos, who crashed. Which the minute I saw that, I was like, dude, you don't have any spare parts left.
Dude.
Like, this is not good for you.
And what's funny about that is that I think that it was the track both times. Like, Carlos must have pissed someone off, and they have just cast a spell on him because, man, like, runs into the manhole in Vegas, and then just a week later, like, runs into like a bump on the track that the FIA then like ran out overnight and like cleared up.
Right. Who hates
Man.
Carlos to put a curse on him though?
I don't
Who
know.
could hate that man?
The originator of the smooth operator name must be because they're like, no, he is using my nickname in
They're
vain.
not giving us any money.
Speaking of Carlos, though, very, very funny thing happened during the practice sessions where I guess Carlos has this tendency to just kind of sit on the track sometimes, just be at the worst possible place when someone's on a hot lap or just trying to get around the track. And Piastri is coming up behind Carlos and then sees Carlos right there, and he goes on the radio and says, "Classic Carlos, just sitting in the middle of the road. Nothing's changed, I see." I mean, yo, that is some straight heat coming from a rookie, bro. Like, what? That is hilarious, man. Because those two have had tangles, but this entire season. I think this is probably the third time this has happened with them now. So that's just funny.
Honestly, I can imagine Carlos Sainz just zoning out in the middle of the track. Like sometimes when you see them just like looking at like during an interview, like you can just imagine him just be like, I have to drive this car. What am I doing? Oh.
Oh man!
It's like, Carlos, you're in the middle of the track. Oh, I was not paying attention.
He's probably just humming like all of Sade's like greatest hits in his mind as he's like racing in the track.
Oh, Carlos!
No need to ask. I'm a smooth body.
Yeah. Well, let's speaking of sticking with Ferrari, let's move into qualifying because speaking of the man, the myth, the legend, Carlos just got hung out to dry there in Q1 a little bit. And I think that this is still sort of part of the continuing conversation that you and I are having about how qualifying format needs a change. Max was also getting really impatient with people. He kept trying to like pass people like in the like tunnel of the pit lane. He was mad that the Alfa Romeo or the Williams were like trying to like get like cut off. Like I don't know what the rules are for trying to like get into the fast lane and the pit lane to leave. Seemed reasonable to me, you just let somebody in, you're queuing,
you see a spot,
filter.
Yeah, you see a spot, you take it, yeah.
But apparently, according to Max, they're not supposed to do that. Which I don't know, could just be Max being impatient. Yeah. He's a pretty impatient guy, I've noticed.
Yeah.
But yeah, poor Carlos did not make it out of Q1, and pretty much it was just track positioning and just not getting him out on time to really be able to put in the lap he needed. Which is easy to happen, and I honestly feel like the only solution for this is to just have have the qualifying done in sections, five drivers go out at a time, put out a hot lap and then come in and then you send the next out. I mean, if that were to extend a qualifying session.
Yeah, about like a half hour or something like that. Yeah, because it's frustrating.
You know what I mean?
I hate watching qualifying, and then it gets red flagged, right? And then they just don't resume it, and it's like, and it's great because that has resulted in a lot of really interesting pole position winners and an interesting mix when you go to Q2 and Q3 and everything. But man, sometimes you're just like, really, like, okay,
Do you think the drivers have like a Vin Diesel attitude where it's like, it doesn't matter if you win by an inch or a mile, like pole position is pole position? Because I could imagine like if you were like, you managed to pull the lap out there when it was raining and then it just torrentially downpoured and then everyone was like, you got pole position. It's just like, yeah, but like, I think everybody else would have been faster, know, like it almost feels like a hollow victory, right?
I'm sure it's a good balance, right? I mean, I think everyone there is pretty self-aware of where their driving skills are and the strengths and weaknesses of their cars, right? And I'll tell you what, there are 18 drivers who weren't driving the RB19, so I think they all know that they're the slower car, right? So even like all season long, I'm sure that's been in the back of everyone's head, right? Even Charles, right? Even though he got so many poles this season, he wasn't able to convert any of them, and not for lack of trying. It's just that the RB19 just comes in with like the 1-2 punch, like death ray, and you're done.
You know that he is one pole position away from having the number 2 most pole positions for a Ferrari.
Really?
Yeah. He is one away from Nicky Lauda. Nicky Lauda has number 2. I don't know, remember how many pole positions he has, but apparently if Charles had gotten pole for this race, he would have been the number 2 Ferrari driver with the most poles, which is crazy, right? To think.
Wow.
It's crazy to think about that. I mean, obviously number 1's Michael Schumacher because he's won 7 world championships for them. Or no, he won 5.
6.
5. Yeah, because he won 2 with Benetton.
Yes.
So, but yeah, it's crazy to think about that. It's just like Charles has had a lot of race wins with Ferrari, but he's had no world championships, and yet he is on the cusp of surpassing Nicky Lauda, who has two world championships with Ferrari, as the number 2 person on the spot with the most pole positions for the team.
That's
insane. That's
insane.
crazy to think about.
That tells you a lot about Ferrari, though, right? I think.
Yeah.
I mean, because you also had Fernando. You also had Seb, like that right there. Those 2 right there, those are like legends of the sport, right? And oh man, that says a lot.
How wild is that? Yeah, how wild is that? Well, speaking of great performances, though, shout out to specifically McLaren, the McLaren team.
Yes,
they did a great qualifying finish, but also Yuki Tsunoda qualified 6th, and I was really happy for Yuki. I mean. Good. I mean, just good effort all around. Honestly, Like that was not like that wasn't a fluke. Like he had some genuine pace in that car, and it translated to the race pretty well.
That's true. I was gonna say, granted, Perez did get his lap time deleted, and there was another driver who had the lap time deleted. I forget who it was, but because they both had faster laps than Tsunoda, but then their lap times were deleted, so they got.
They still would have It still would have put him in 8th.
You know
He still made it to Q3.
Yeah, he was still in Q3. On merit, he was still in Q3. But yes, Tsunoda was doing a great job, and Hulkenberg too. Like, dude, that Haas is quick, man. That Haas is quick, and it's so sad that it has not converted into actual points. And we'll talk about points and stuff because we are planning on having a nice deep dive data analysis episode coming up here real soon about like what this season looked like points wise and some other interesting stats.
Yeah, no, absolutely fantastic for Haas. But yeah, like you said, I mean, it's just like they just can't translate it. It just in all season they've had like great qualifiers, and then just it falls apart because it just goes to show you like qualifying and racing are 2 different animals. Like, one leads into the next one, but it's not a translation for the next thing, right?
An F1 race weekend is like an anamorph, like
sort of
qualifying like into.
Yeah,
I would always take the books and just do the flipping at that was the coolest part for me,
Yeah, it's like I mean, I think it's like there's a difference between doing like being at like a shooting range, but then like also like being in a wartime situation. It's like they're different. It's a different animal, and it's like just But anyway, let's get into the race. Because, speaking of Ferrari, Charles, that first little lap, like I thought he was going to do it. Dude. I thought he was going to be able to get Max. But did you see that Red Bull around the turn, like when he was fighting back from Charles?
Yes,
it just had so much grip around the outside.
Yeah,
I mean, come on.
Yeah. It was first off. The shout out to every single driver for keeping it nice and tight on lap 1. I don't know if it's because everyone's just like, it's Abu Dhabi, whatever, I'm not going to gun it off the line, or if everyone's just like, oh, I'm thinking about the long stretch goal here, I want to get to the end of the race kind of thing, right? Shout out everyone for doing a good job off the jump. But yeah, that was wild. I was really, really hoping Charles would be able to get it done right there, but our patron saint Saint Leclerc just couldn't get it done.
No, and I don't think it was his fault. I think he did everything right. It's just that Red Bull has so much pace around those turns. Like I was just watching him, and like it's like Max just you did that thing where Charles had that inside position, right? And so the idea is like he should be able to make a straight line to the next apex of the turn. But Max just had carried so much speed around the outside that he was able to retake track position to hit the apex of the next turn, and just Charles couldn't do anything about it. It was just insane to see the Red Bull that quick around a turn. I mean, absolutely wild. So Charles wasn't really able to do. I think he hung on for, I think at least 10 or 12 laps. He was, I think, like 1.3 or 1.4 seconds away until
Yeah.
Max just started to, I think he just, the tires went away and Max just started to, take off, just, fuck off down the street. So.
Do you think that Charles used up his tires there, like kind of burned him up?
I think so. I mean, I'm trying to remember who pitted first of the two Ferraris. Because, well, I mean, we can talk about it, but a little later. But Sainz was on a way different strategy than Leclerc was, and I think that's probably fair. I think that, like, when you're, especially in the beginning stint, like, your tires only have a certain amount of lifetime where you have to, like, kind of eke the performance sort of back out of them.
Yeah.
Because I think the mediums will do a thing where they will be really quick for a while and then they have this sort of dead period, but then they kind of come back a little bit again before they completely fall off the cliff. Right.
And it depends on which compound you're talking, right? Because you have it could be the medium on any day could be the C2, the C3, the C4.
Right.
And the C4 could be hard another day. You know what I mean? So it's just like, I don't know. Like,
yeah, it's tough to say. And, like, honestly, I mean, Max was complaining about his tires going out, but I don't even know. Like, like, part of me feels like Max just notices the smallest slight change and then just, like, equates it, like, kind of, he sort of catastrophizes it a little bit, and the team's just like, it's fine, Max, whatever.
But that's what makes you a champion, man. You think about the small details, man.
Well, he's just going to be tortured if he's ever in a car that has a ton of, problems with it. Like, but yeah, so obviously, yeah, Charles had made an effort, didn't really translate. Max pretty much stayed out front, and then it really just became a battle for the second and third positions. And that also had some really strong constructor implications.
Big time.
One of them actually being Alpha Tauri, which Yuki, who had started sixth, did a really good job of maintaining himself in that top 10 finish. He ended up finishing eighth, which is technically where I think he would have qualified had the penalties not come out. But the more exciting thing is that Yuki at this race became the second Japanese driver to ever lead a Formula One Grand Prix. It was only for like a couple of laps, but like he did it. Hey, leading is leading.
That was so cool to see his name at the top at like
I know.
P1. And like,
I was half tempted to take like a picture of it and be like, put in one of those freeze this moment memes or whatever. You're
probably wondering how I got here.
But yeah, no, great job from Yuki Tsunoda, and I think the commentators even commented about how his radio messages were very calm and collective, and
he's shown a lot of maturity. I think.
Yeah,
I think French Toast has really rubbed off on him, right? Because I think that's kind of been the biggest issue that Alpha Tauri, now Racing Bulls, maybe next. I mean,
Racing Bulls.
Yeah, did you not see the
no? That's what they're going.
The name change. Yeah, so it looks like it's gonna be Racing Bulls next season going forward.
That's gonna be so confusing. Racing Bulls and Red Bull Racing. Why don't they call it Racing Red Bull? No, Red Racing Bulls.
Or why don't they call it Sugar-Free Red Bull? Not with less calories. Sorry.
Oh, okay. No, then okay. Hold on a second.
And Yuki Tsunoda.
Okay. I'm gonna look up Red Bull flavors, and we'll see which one works best. Okay, Red Bull flavors. Let's see what we got here. Okay, wings for every taste is what they say. Same benefit, different taste. Okay, so let's see. What do we got? We have the winter edition, pear cinnamon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's the peach edition, the amber edition. Okay, there's some. Okay, strawberry apricot, watermelon, tropical. Okay, blueberry, dragon fruit, coconut berry, and then peach nectarine.
Ooh, peach nectarine is good. The other thought I had ringing around.
Yeah,
in his
there's Red Bull
noggin.
Zero, then Red Bull Sugar Free. Yeah,
That's
you're
what I'm saying. Red Bull Zero, Red Bull Sugar Free. Or if you just want to really go into the joke, just go full tilt and just call the team Rich Energy. All right. Bring them back. Make them the official title sponsor.
Oh God.
Christian Horner and Helmet can just wash their hands of the junior team. Right.
I'm telling you, if Liquid Death showed up and sponsored AlphaTauri, and it was like,
The Liquid
Death Racing, I'm buying all the merch. I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna buy the whole thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I guess so. These are just colored flavors, but I guess the three they have they're sugar free, they're regular, and the zero. I honestly think Red Bull Zero or Zero Bull. Ooh, Zero Bull. That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
And Sonoda in the Zero Bull, pulling up on Daniel Ricciardo in the other Zero Bull.
Mention the commercials. He takes a swig.
He's like,
Zero Bull, 100% commitment.
he's like, I like my energy drinks like I like my racing. Zero Bull.
That's great. Well, so racing bulls,
yeah.
that sounds terrible.
But good for Yuki Tsunoda. The reason I brought up Francis, this was actually his last race as team principal. He has retired as of now, right?
Right.
He's been in the sport for a super long time, so shout out to him. Enjoy your retirement. But he has really been, I think, an advocate for Yuki as far as him maturing and whatnot. And I think he showed a lot of that in his race. He's definitely kept his cool a lot more over this last season. So
yeah,
congrats to Yuki.
Yeah, I hope if it would be awesome if next year suddenly Yuki was like the one racing
pops off.
And it's just like, but could you imagine? Let's just speculate for a second. Could you imagine that scenario where Yuki and AlphaTauri, okay, it's like him and Danny Ricciardo are racing to compete for who's the top position, and then Red Bull just pulls Yuki out of the AlphaTauri and puts it in a Red Bull. Do you think Yuki would do that, or do you think Yuki would stay with AlphaTauri if he's getting success? This is that scenario of it's a sister team. What do you do when the sister team is more successful than the main team? What if Red Bulls Racing or Racing Bulls
Red Bull Zero
Red Bull Zero is doing way better than the normal Red Bull Racing? What do you do?
I mean, I can't imagine that would ever be the case. But if that were the case,
they just swap cars secretly. They just change the liveries on them, and it's wait a minute, this doesn't look right.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like you would have to, you can't just swap the drivers. That'd be a bad look.
It would be a bad look, but it's also Red Bull.
You gotta just accept it.
Yeah. Well, anyway, enough of bulls racing.
Enough of that bull.
Enough of that. Let's talk about Piastri a little bit.
Oscar.
Because
talk about Oscar Piastri.
Oscar Piastri.
Favorite food. What was? Did you see that?
No. What's his favorite food?
They had fun facts about Oscar Piastri and and Lewis Hamilton at the same time, pulled up on screen, and I think Oscar Piastri really likes chocolate. Oh, and his favorite cuisine of food was pasta. And I was like, I don't know if that's a cuisine. That's a genre.
Yeah.
Not a cuisine.
It's like my favorite cuisine of food is hot dogs.
I like bread.
I like bread. Could you imagine someone's just what's your favorite cuisine of choice? It's American. I love me some cheeseburgers and corn dogs. Well, good for Piastri eating that hot pasta. I like it.
Oscar.
But for real though, that guy had a pretty stellar rookie season, I will say.
Amazing.
And he topped it off today with his defense against the dark arts teacher Russell, and he did such a good job. He did such a good job defending Russell. Obviously, ultimately he couldn't. He made a mistake at the end of the straight. He locked up a little bit. Russell was able to pass, but he gave him a run for his money, and
he did.
Good for him, man.
He did. And so he Avada Kedavra'd those tires, and then he was just,
that's right.
They was cooked.
Yeah, they had to Wingardium Leviosa had his car up so they could get the wheels off of it. Could you imagine Wizards in F1? It's just like for the pit change, it's just one guy that comes out and he just like waves the car up and like moves the tires away and then like they get them back on and
Yeah. Formula Quidditch.
I mean, dude, does the Wizarding World have any racing? Like,
dude, the Wizarding World would have like their most exciting race series would be with Ford Model Ts. You know what I mean?
Well, no, I mean they have brooms. Do they do like Quidditch style racing, where it's like broom racing? Like,
well, that's not as fun. It's like magic, like maybe maybe they would have like a Model T running off of magic, right?
Oh, what about a flying car racing series? Like they have the flying Ford Anglia.
Okay, I would trust wizards and witches who fly on brooms more than I would normal people, because all this stuff about flying cars, y'all. I'm just saying it right here, right now. People cannot drive in 2 dimensions. I'm not going to add a third and allow someone to drive. Like,
absolutely not.
No,
yeah, absolutely
no.
not. Yeah, no. Well, you know what the thing is, Idris? We have several Harry Potter experts in our lives we could easily ask about what racing sort of things would happen in a wizard world. So we will have to ask them and get back to you on this.
Yes.
But I'm genuinely fascinated with the idea of Hogwarts style world of racing.
Yeah.
But anyway, go Hufflepuff.
Wait, have you always quizzed as a Hufflepuff? I've always quizzed as a Hufflepuff.
I took it twice and I was 100%.
I've taken it multiple times, and every single time, I think like I was like, no, I that can't be right, and I just accepted. I'm a Hufflepuff. We need a theme song for that.
Oh yeah. No, I'm down to it. That'll be a shirt, Hufflepuff gang.
Gang.
So good job for Piastri, really topping off his season. I think he finished up. I think he ended up having 97 points from his rookie season, which is absolutely great for him. Like, good for him.
And what's great about that is that makes all the drama that happened for prior to him getting into the sport absolutely worth it, right?
Yes,
like
100%. Yeah.
Honestly, when that happened, when he tweeted out that I will not be, actually, I'm going to do my best Oscar Piastri here. I will not be driving for Alpine. I can't do it. All I can say is Oscar Piastri. That's all I can really do, and that's not even really good. But when he tweeted out saying that I'm not driving for Alpine, you'll be hearing from me soon, one of 2 things was going to happen: that his F1 career was going to be trash, and his rookie season was going to be awful, or he was going to come in real hot and just do some amazing things. And it was the latter, folks. And this has been a fun season to watch him do all this.
It took him a minute. It took a minute for McLaren to kind of get their groove,
get their stuff together.
Once they shrugged off that terrible livery, they really started to do better. So
sponsor. I was gonna say, speaking of Piastri, he had a little entanglement, to borrow a word from Jada Pinkett Smith, with Perez. And that got real wild. There was an incident where Piastri was on the outside. It was a left-hand turn. Piastri's coming around the outside. Piastri was further along ahead, but Perez was on the inside, and they touch. And Perez goes on the radio and says, he just drove into me. And then Piastri's like, he just turned into me. Right, so it's like that Spider-Man meme. Who's right? Who's right here?
Turn around. Every now and then I get an Oscar Piastri running two in my tires. I noticed that too.
What'd you think of that?
Well, the slow-mo, from what I could see from the slow-mo, what it looked like is that Perez did not cut into the chicane further than he should have or could have. I mean, I'm assuming he's probably trying to fend off Piastri, right? I think his idea was that I don't think he realized that Piastri was as far alongside him as he was, because he did not turn into the apex as far as he might normally have done. And so Piastri was right there because he was pretty much at full lock. I think where he was coming to the turn, I think he washed a little bit, but he was mostly at full lock, and he just bumped into Piastri. So I think what happened was that he went in deep.
Yeah.
Not really thinking that Piastri was going to be there, but Piastri was there. And ultimately, Piastri was alongside him enough to be entitled racing room.
Yeah.
And that's why he got the penalties. So
Yeah, my thing was, yeah, it looked like it looked like Perez drove into Piastri. It looked like he didn't give him the room there. But I was surprised to see that there was a 5-second penalty. And the reason I say this is because I'm comparing this with another event that happened during the race where we see Alonso effectively brake test Hamilton, right? And
yeah.
Alonso in that instance, for those that didn't see it, Alonso's in front of Hamilton going into a turn, and pretty much I think he's trying to get him to get in front so he can get the DRS activation on him, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Which leads to another discussion that we need to have about DRS, its effectiveness, like some rule changes around that.
Right.
We'll hold that for another time. But Alonso effectively brake tests Hamilton, it looks like, and Hamilton goes on the radio instantly. He's like, what the heck? And even the commentator's like, yeah, that is some very dangerous driving, right? Just because the driver behind does not necessarily have the reaction time to do anything about it just because of the speeds they're going at. I mean, F1 drivers are quick. They have lightning fast reflexes, but they're not that quick. It can't be physics. So for Alonso to not be given a 5-second penalty for what he did in his instance versus what Perez did with Piastri, I was a little confused by that. It didn't seem... It felt like between those two, the one that should have gotten the penalty was Alonso. But I don't know. What did you think about that? Because those two I was kind of comparing and contrasting. It was just like that.
No, well, see, you're
you're
exactly right. That's exactly what Alonso was trying to do, because it was the exit of 3 and 4. Because the pit exit dumps the drivers out right after 2 into 3 and 4, and then 3 and 4, the detection zone is right at the end of 4 into that 5, which then leads to the start finish straight. Yeah. And so I think what happened was that I think Alonso throughout the race was complaining that they were really slow on the straightaways, right? And Alonso is, he's in his own race trying to maximize the amount of points as he has, because Stroll is certainly not helping, and he's just trying to not only secure his place in the driver's standing, but also trying to lift Aston Martin above McLaren at this point, right? So I think that what happened was, at least that's and which is why I think they sort of deemed it as like a no further actions, because essentially Alonso, when he came out of the turn, he let off the gas for sure, because he knew Hamilton was coming right on his tail, coming around him, and I think that he was assuming that Hamilton would have recognized that that was a moment that he could have just jumped out to the inside, make the turn, and then Alonso would have had DRS to kind of pass. So had Hamilton just swerved to the outside and passed up Alonso, then I don't really think anybody would have noticed, because they would have just been like, oh, that's weird, Alonso slowed down for that moment, but it would have passed by. But I think it's the fact that Hamilton basically was giving Alonso the benefit of the doubt that he was going to be fully on it the whole time.
Sure.
That is where it started to get into trouble. And as Martin said on the telecast, which is I think a fair assessment enough, is that these cars don't have brake lights. So they brake so quickly, it's irrelevant. So I think a lot of this just boiled down to the sort of Alonso trying to sort of manufacture a scenario to where he would not be vulnerable to Hamilton because he'd be on the attack. But Hamilton coming out of the pits was not anticipating that he would immediately be able to take a spot. I think he thought that Alonso was going to put up a fight, so he was surprised by that. So yes, I think it was a little bit of a cheeky move. I think it could have ended up pretty poorly, but I think ultimately it was more or less, I think it was both in their hands, because on the one case, it's let's say, for example, Alonso had a breakdown in that moment, and Hamilton just crashed into him because he didn't realize that he broke down at that instant. Would that have been Alonso's fault? No, because it would have been a mechanical failure. So I think at the same time, it's Hamilton should have been able to also anticipate, which he did. I mean, he kind of anticipated, saw what happened, he was able to react. But yeah, it was weird. But I feel like it's one thing if it's a deliberate decision to try and hurt somebody else, or try and I think it was out of strategy, and I think maybe that was the deciding factor. So who knows?
All right, guys. See, you're seeing here firsthand that, an Alonso stan and a Hamilton stan can be friends. I can 100,000% disagree with Gabe's assessment because he's wrong, and we're still friends at the end of the day. It's okay. I'm kidding.
I thought you were gonna say, see, Gabe's an Alonso stan, but he still criticizes the moves that are made.
Oh yeah, that too. Yeah.
Well, yeah,
but yeah, no, it's no, I agreed. That's the thing. I wouldn't honestly, if I could pick any job in F1 to not do, it would be being a steward. I think it would be. It's got to be a very, very tough position to be in, where you see an incident happen, you look at these different replays, and then you have just a handful of minutes to make a decision. Or you can make a decision after the race, right? But still, like, you are affecting and impacting, like, not just like livelihoods, because like the money that these teams get from their different places in the Constructors' Championship and Drivers' Championship can affect who they bring on board, all that kind of stuff. So that,
Yeah, right. No, for sure. Yeah, well, just to move on really quickly, speaking of trying to slow down to give an advantage to another driver, right at the end there, Charles realized, well, let's just say this will be our this sort of ties into our Mamma Mia Scuderia segment, which I guess we can just announce right now. Here it is. So Sainz, for some reason, his strategist, 50 laps into a 58 lap race, are like, we're going to hold out for a safety car. And
oh my God.
They just left him on his tires at 10th place because they were expecting a safety car to happen. It didn't happen, and Carlos was out of the points. So, because of that, what did Charles have to do? Charles was trying to be the biggest team player he could. So what did he do? He risked giving up his second place position.
Yep, completely.
Try and see if he can get Perez to get far enough away from Russell so that he could take a 5-second penalty, but still be above Russell, and then Ferrari would still be above Perez. Didn't happen because, well, Russell is quick enough. So Russell kept that gap down, and Charles was just like, well, I tried.
Yeah.
And you know what? You did try, Charles. Yeah. And I commend you for it, man.
Dude, how can you... All right, here's a question. If you are let's say you're the president of the United States, right? Mm-hmm. How can you be president of the country and general of the army and captain or whatever the platoon leader would be and a soldier at the same time? Because that is what this man Charles Leclerc has to do every single weekend. Oh my goodness. Also, and Carlos too. What the hell?
I know. Well, and on top of also having to do like how many setting and car changes in between turns, like they're doing like, it's like they're doing like a dozen people's jobs at the same time.
It is unbelievable. You know what I mean? It is unbelievable. Wow. Like, you have a strategy team who should be giving direction and directive to the drivers of, you guys need to do this thing now, because this is going to get us a team. What happened to the Ferrari back in the day that would tell the drivers, like, you need to be doing this, right? Like, I definitely felt that from like the Arriva Bene days, right?
Right.
Where like what the wall said was like, sacrament, right? You do it.
Right. Yeah, you do it. Yeah.
And now it just feels like they're in such disarray back there. I like you are Ferrari, arguably the world's most popular and like I don't even know if I would say exclusive, but people love Ferrari, right? Like,
I'd say it's relatively exclusive.
Yeah, it's relatively exclusive. More so. I think it's more popular than Lamborghini, Pagani, Bugatti, right? Others may argue with me on that. That's fine, but you get the point. Ferrari's Ferrari. People love. They sleep, eat, live, breathe this thing. You have so much money, right? Like, why aren't you out there hiring the best? Like, what is going on inside Ferrari that they just keep fumbling the bag like this? Because Charles, and it's like the opposite of Mercedes, right? Mercedes is like consistently there. Like we've said this before, they're that 3.5 star restaurant that like it's solid food over and over and over and over again, right? Whereas Ferrari, they just anytime they come to a race weekend, it's like their drivers are the only people who are doing a good job, right? It's like you go to a restaurant where the service is awesome, but then everything behind the closed doors in the back is just awful and trash, right? Like occasionally you get a good meal.
Yeah, you show up there once, and there's like a fist fight happening in the back of the kitchen, and like the waiter is like slightly hungover, and you're like, I'm not sure what's it. Yeah. But then there's just like the one chef just like kicks everyone out, and then he makes you the most incredible linguine you've ever had in your life. But then it also gives you food poisoning. So it's like it's just like the meal on the one occasion where you're sitting down and everything is right and the meal is just on point.
Yeah.
It can, like, that high is so high for Ferrari fans that they will continue to go back to that restaurant hoping that the circumstances all line up for that moment. They got that in Singapore. So that was the one day that they showed up at the restaurant and they were able to get their meal and nobody was hurt or stabbed. So like it was fine, you know. But honestly, this kind of leads into a discussion, something I wanted to ask you about. And I guess, I mean, we could pretty much just, I would say we could more or less just segue this into our sort of podium vibes at this end point, just to kind of finish out the season and the race. During the qualifying, they were making a lot of comments about how much input Fernando Alonso was putting on the steering wheel at any given time. And I watched a video where Hamilton was explaining all these different buttons. There were several buttons where he was just like, you're never going to understand this, so I'm not going to explain it. And like, you know, was going through. And I thought to myself, why are the drivers doing this so much? I'm looking at this and I'm just thinking, like, you expect, like, you're sitting in the car, you have your gas, you have your steering, you know, you're shifting, you're focusing on how you're positioned on track, what gear you're in. But like they're also changing, like, halfway through a turn, they will
like
change
brake bias,
suspension settings, like engine mapping, like, you know, gear shifts, like transmission stuff. And do you think it would be better for the drivers if they did not have to worry about half that stuff? Like, I know it would slow the cars down and the lap times would go down, but I feel like it would be worth it for the racing's sake. It's like, give the drivers some more mental control back. You know what I mean? Because it's like there is so much happening. They are so stressed out in those cars. Just like give them just a couple of things. Like let's regress a little bit here. Like they can shift. They can, you know, they can change the transmission, right? Maybe they can adjust the bias slightly for the brakes, left and like front and rear, right? But like leave the make like the engine mapping and anything like that should just be set in its place for the beginning of the race, and would only be changed if the driver was instructed, press this sequence of buttons because the car is going to fail or something.
Sure.
You know, like there's got to be some way to do this, because I feel like I want to see the drivers have more mental capacity to actually be able to race.
Yeah.
And I know, like, I feel like they're throwing too much technology, and it's stuff that, like, the in the pit lane they used to be able to make adjustments to on the track, which they can't do now because that's like a, you know, violation of the rules or whatever. But I just think that the drivers should not have to worry about it as much, and I think like that's part of the reason why they're trying to make the new engines a lot simpler going forward, because it's trying to make that less of a thing. I mean, what do you think? I'm
Also, the additional reason for reducing the complexity of the propulsion unit, the engines, is that it makes it easier for new engine manufacturers to come into the sport, right? Like Cadillac, hopefully with Andretti, we'll see. If I still don't fit about that. But no, I agree. This really resonates with me because I was just watching this last week, since it was like Thanksgiving break here in the States. This video called Disassembling the Greatest F1 Car with the Men Who Made It, the 1988 McLaren MP44, on the channel JM on Car. So they got three of like the leads from that season who are working at McLaren. There's Steve Nichols, and I forget the other two gentlemen's their name, but like chief mechanic, chief designer, and I think the chief aero designer, if I remember correctly. Yeah. And the chief mechanic was like walking you through like the like inside the driver's cockpit, like the panel that they had, right? And like that steering wheel is so simple. Like you literally had a light for fuel to let you know if fuel was low. You had another light to let you know if oil pressure was off, and then you have like an actual mechanical lever. It was I think it was a mechanical lever, a switch that you would rotate, dial, that would adjust brake bias for you, more in the front, more in the rear, that sort of thing, right? And that was like it for the most part, right?
Right.
And I remember thinking like, man, could you imagine just driving this car? All you really have to worry about is just your bias, right? Your brake bias, and maybe a couple of suspension settings. Like, yeah, I kind of wonder. And it made me think just that what you're saying here, like maybe there's too much going on, right? I think there have been a few times this season where Fernando has talked about, Lance Stroll's positioning because he's watching the monitors and like, so that makes you think like, oh, maybe they have some extra mental reserves that he can do other stuff. Sure. But yeah, I do wonder if it is too much to ask the drivers to do all that, right? To do effectively like command line, command prompt programming, right? While they're driving. Like maybe I could see what you're saying there. I do like that idea of like, hey, the engine's about to fail, enter, go to this mode, do this, right? I guess what I'm curious about is what would be the argument against that, right? Like why would people want to keep it the way it is now? You know what I mean? Because I think I'm on your side here. I think I agree with you.
I think the only reason why they would say that is because it would make the car slower if they didn't, because like so much of the reason why they're as fast as they are is because they're able to dial in the car settings per turn, and not and so that I think would effectively slow, but it would slow everybody down.
Yeah,
and I think like they're also worried in a sense of reliability because the driver is capable of making changes to the car to prevent it from completely failing, and therefore like it's saving the money. So maybe it's a budget thing. But I feel like, honestly, if you built the engines to be a little bit more robust, a little less delicate, and gave the driver less to be focused on, I honestly think it would be better. I think it would be better. And
I'll say this too. I think like you're saying that the cars will get slower. That's okay. And to those who say like racing is about speed, I don't know. I think speed is one element of it, right?
Yeah.
It is a feature of it. Racing is about the overtaking, getting up to the limit, and how you can pass people, right? And how you utilize that speed, like the apex, the angles at which you're taking the apex and going into corners, that kind of thing. That's the really fun part, right?
Yeah.
Like just because a car goes really fast doesn't necessarily mean it's fun to watch, right? Like some people probably would not find drag racing fun at all, right? Like it's over and done, right? Like I think a good example would be for any roller coaster people or for any amusement park people, Top Thrill Dragster up in Cedar Point, right? RIP because they disassembled it. Right. That's a ride that's over in like what, 5 seconds? I think less than like 4.2 seconds, right? And then you have like Millennium Force, which is like a more well-rounded experience where there's like a super, super tall, like deep drop. You get a couple of good hills. You get lots of airtime, fun thrills. You get kind of jostle around. And that's a much longer experience, right? The top speed is not as high, but I think people would argue that the Millennium Force is probably a better, more fun, more whole experience, right? And the same could be said for this here with going towards an era of racing that maybe you reduce the top speed, but you encourage more, you encourage the manufacturers and the constructors to, I guess, work more towards their strengths, right? Because you always hear McLaren's good at chassis design. You always hear Mercedes is good at engine design, all this kind of stuff. So I think by going in that direction, you actually would allow the constructors to have something that's more unique about them, right? From car to car versus like, well, I have honed in my engine mapping set up to the precise, most optimal. And it's like, I don't know if that's as fun, but yeah, I like this idea.
Well, and it's like if you look every historic race that you go and watch, whether it's like old touring cars or even older F1 cars from like the 70s or even the 80s, like they were going a lot slower.
Yeah.
than the cars are going now.
Mhm.
But it was way more exciting to watch, because they were definitely more. There was more driver as far as mechanical control. Like it wasn't like drivers changing all the settings and buttons control. It was more like the drivers were able to like they had more of a feel in the car to be able to make like kind of maneuver it around a turn, and that just looks exponentially more exciting than you know. But yeah, I honestly, yeah, I think that drivers need to be doing less.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it. But
And yet again, Alonso and Hamilton stands hand in hand.
friendship. Yeah, well, so this season was really intense overall.
One for the books.
One for the books for sure. Max ends up with 19 wins with his RB19. That's poetic. Definitely one of the more dominant seasons, if not the most dominant season of all in F1 history. I still don't think they still didn't get a perfect season, which is I think the elusive thing that so many teams have been trying to achieve, and that is I think isn't that a one? Is that a 1-2 in every race, or is it at least one a winning and a constructor winning every single race in a season? I think.
I mean, if we're talking from the team's perspective, yeah, it would have to be the 1-2. At least in my opinion of what the definition should be.
Perfect season. Yeah.
Not the penultimate.
Right. But they came close. It was really impressive to see, and I think honestly, really, so much of that Red Bull dominance was just because everybody else is still on the back foot.
Yeah,
they still didn't figure out what they were supposed to be doing. So hopefully, they will learn till next year. I mean, Mercedes should hopefully make a lot of improvements because they're moving away from that design with the driver position being too far in the zero side pod thing. That's all done with. So. Hopefully they will improve, and hopefully that will make for a better season as far as a varied race finishes next year. So,
absolutely.
But yeah, I guess, yeah. I mean, I think it's sort of a weird end to the season. I think it was interesting how a lot of the teams and drivers decided to just carry their liveries and helmet designs over from Vegas into this race.
Yeah, I wasn't feeling that. I don't know if I like that black Alfa Romeo, honestly.
Yeah, it looks too close to a Mercedes. If they had more gold on it, then because they had the gold wheels and the gold accents, but if there was like more gold on it, then gold. Maybe it'd be a little more rich like, energy.
Bro, that's what I'm about to say. Rich and just commit. All these teams are like dancing around it. Everyone wants to be rich energy. Just commit and do it. Well,
I mean, I think it was like originally the John Player special library with Lotus, right? And then Rich Energy just stole that. But even before them, Lotus had taken it back too. So like black and gold is like
it's clean.
It's clean. It's a unique color scheme. But yeah, I don't know. Who knows? Maybe Red Bulls will.
You mean racing Bulls?
Racing
Red Bull
Bulls,
Zero.
Red Bull Zero will they'll try something different next year. Maybe it'll be like white and chrome like the can is.
Yeah.
Actually wouldn't look too bad.
It would look really nice actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one thing too, I think that our final in our season recap, we're gonna have to look at all of the special liveries that showed up throughout this year and give us we'll rank them. I think that might probably be a good idea. So stay tuned for that, everybody.
Yeah.
Well, Iddris, anything else you wanted to say to cap off the season?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think it was pretty clear. Actually about the race, real quick, that it was Abu Dhabi is still a snoozer for track. Please fix it. Do something. If it were maybe honestly, it's the fact that it ends in Abu Dhabi. If Abu Dhabi were like in the middle of the season, whatever, and we end on Vegas would have been more interesting to end on, to be perfectly honest. And that's saying a lot. But rearrange the calendar or do something to that track. Like,
you know what they should do?
What should they do, Gabe?
This is what they should do. They should add a crossover.
That would be interesting.
Like, if I don't know how everything is built. It would probably take a lot. But exiting out, so you leave. I'm looking at the track right now. So you have the start finish straight. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the long straight, and then 6 and 7. Instead of having 8 be another long curve, they should wrap it back around, have like some other chicane come through, and then just have another heavy braking zone, right turn over like a little bridge that just carries you back out into the front finish straight, or move the front finish straight down a little bit so that you can have a little bridge cross over the track and enter back in.
Something, yeah, just to spice it up.
I mean, because yeah, like they need to do something to make this more interesting.
Yeah.
I really want another track that's got a crossover. That's such a cool thing for a track to have.
Mm-hmm.
And it can't just be Suzuka that's got the rights to that,
Yeah.
man. Like, they should build a track up in Washington State or something, and just have like have a crossover under a giant redwood tree or something. Who knows?
Ooh.
I mean,
Ooh.
have that in
Yes.
North California.
That's giving major cruising USA vibes right there.
Oh hell yeah, cruising!
Shout out if you know what I mean. But yeah, the only crazy thing I'll say about Yas Marina, did you see the new podium structure? What the heck is that,
I
man?
just looked it up.
Oh my god, that's where that
yeah,
$1 billion
that's-
went. The hell?
Yeah, that's pretty wild. It's like this, like a monolith in the middle of
It's
it.
very intense. It's very intense.
Um,
If you haven't seen it, if you didn't watch like the podium ceremony, just take a look at the Yas Marina podium structure.
Yeah,
It is.
yeah, that's intense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is new. It's just out there.
You know what? You know what they were going for? They were going for Monza.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
Monza kind of has that sort
Mhm.
of central, like kind of
Yeah.
circular thing that overlooks the crowd. Yeah, that's like a
Yeah.
Monza podium.
It honestly, as it stands there, it just says to me, "Witness me." That's what it says to me.
Yeah.
It says, "I am a biotic god."
I will say one of the coolest thing that Max did all of this whole season was at the end he was doing donuts.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and then like the minute he got done with his donut, it would just and it stopped right there in front of the first, and just smoke everywhere. And I was just
Yeah.
like, ooh, that was
Yeah.
that
It's
was a
like, ooh.
smooth move. Like it
Ooh.
was like literally right next to the podium,
Oh man.
and he just like slotted right in.
Real talk, like Red Bull knows the Max was gonna win, right? They like what they should have done is partner with Pirelli and just put like a little bit of orange graining or some orange like smoke pellets in the tires, so he would
In
do
the
these
tires.
podiums like
So
the
when he
donuts
did his
and just-
donuts,
Mhm.
orange
Mhm.
smoke. Yeah.
yeah, would have been real nice. Missed opportunity, Pirelli. Come on, hire me.
Well, see, but then they would have been like, "Oh, that was the secret to Max's success for the whole race," and like they would have got like he was cheating because he had special orange
Yeah.
pellets. We're never gonna stop the orange smoke, at least until Max. If Max retires, then maybe it'll
Yeah.
stop. But who knows? Maybe just another
And
Dutch
then
driver will show up and take over.
And then we'll sadly miss it. But yeah, I think that's it for podium vibes. I wanted to say, was there anything else you wanted to say? Because I wanted to kind of let the people know what's up.
No, I'm hungry. I'm ready to go eat.
You're vibed out.
I'm vibed. I'm maxed out, is what I am. Like, we took it to the max, and I'm maxed
Yeah.
out with Max Verstappen all this whole season.
Well, all right. I do want to say, like, Fufo fam, thanks for sticking with us for this first inaugural season of the pod. You guys are what make it possible and what make this really fun to do. Also, to get to talk with my best friend about cars that go vroom vroom zoom zoom. Just be on the lookout because this channel will be updated regularly. We are planning on still dropping weekly episodes. There's going to be, we'll probably take like a little bit of a break, but we do have some really fun, exciting postseason content planned. I think we mentioned a couple times in this episode, we have some deep dive data analysis episodes coming up. I think next week's episode will probably be a season recap. And what we're probably going to do is take a look at our preseason testing episode, or take a listen to that and kind of pull some of our sizzling hot fajitas from that and kind of slice and dice here and kind of poke fun at ourselves. So stay tuned for that, and got some movie reviews coming through. The new Braun GP documentary that just dropped on Disney Plus or Hulu, we'll be watching that and giving you guys our takes on that. So look, just come back because Formula One don't stop, can't stop, won't stop. Actually, I don't even know.
Stop me now. I'm having such a good time. I'm having the ball. One season down, more seasons to go. And as Idris likes to say often, let's go. I'm ready. I'm ready for
Yeah.
I'm ready for next season. But yeah, I think I'm thinking maybe a Christmas break would be probably a good idea.
Yeah.
So,
And of course, we'll get your season recap, all that kind of stuff. So
oh yeah,
just be
yeah.
waiting for that.
Yeah, and honestly, if any of you have any ideas, things you want to hear from us talk about, send us our way. We could definitely have, if we have enough people, sending us messages, we can do a whole episodes where we're just answering questions and talking about stuff. That would be really fun. Honestly, I'd like answering other people's questions.
Yeah.
Well, but anyway, as we said, thanks for listening. You can find us anywhere you listen to your podcast. So let people know. If you want to hit us up, you can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Twitter at F1 or F off. Please, you can send us an email if you'd like to F1 or F off podcast at Gmail, and that's F1 or F off podcast. Please give us a 5-star review or a 3.5 or a 4. Wherever you listen to your podcasts.
There are no fist fights in our kitchen, though.
No. It really does help us out a lot. And please be sure to share it with your friends and your family. 'Tis the season for sharing. It is the season for gifting. And why not gift your friends and your enemies hour-long episodes of two guys from the Midwest talking about a thing that only a certain amount of people care about. So yeah, 100%. I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. Yeah, one season down. Like I said, another to go.
Infinity to go. Yeah,
we're gonna get it going. So yeah, we'll just have robot AI versions of ourselves. Just continue the show forward after we die.
Hamilton, Alonso, Hamilton.
As long as in the video I've got like 8 fingers on one hand, and like the other one's morphing into my shirt.
Yes, absolutely.
And I've got like 3 beards under my beard. And a generic Alonso did it again. Yeah. No, that would be fun. So,
all right, y'all. Later.
Peace.